Masechet Kiddushin Daf Nun Nu Mishnah Al Menat Shani Kohen V'Nimsa Levi Levi V'Nimsa Kohen. A man tells a woman, "Be a mikudeshet to me on condition that I'm a Kohen." But it turns out he's a Levi. Or he says, "I'm a Levi." It turns out he's a Kohen. Or he says, "Natin V'Nimsa Mamzer Mamzer V'Nimsa Natin." Marry me on condition that I'm a Natin. Those are converts that were based on a false presumption. But it turns out he's a Mamzer, which are a different kind of negative lineage. Or he said he was mamzer, but actually he was a natin. Ben ayir v'nimsa kerach, ben kerach v'nimsa ben ayir. Or if he says, I am from a small town, but in fact he's from a big city. Or the other way, he says, I'm from a big city, but turns out he actually lives in a small town. Al menat shebeti karov lemerchas v'nimsa rachok v'nimsa karov. If he says, I'll marry you on condition that my house is close to the bathhouse, but it turns out he's far. Or he says, I'm far from the bathhouse, and turns out he's close. There's benefits to each. Some people like being close to the bathhouse because then it's easy to get there. On the other hand, it might be smelly from the bathhouse or a lot of traffic there, and maybe people don't want to live close to the bathhouse. He says, marry me on condition that I have a daughter or a maidservant who is grown and therefore can help with chores around the house, and so you don't have to worry about that. But it turns out he doesn't have one, or he says he doesn't have one. But in fact he does. He says, marry me on condition that I have children, that I don't have children, but he actually has, or the other way around. In all the cases above, the Kiddushin is no good. Even if she says that in my heart, in my mind, I didn't say it, but in my mind, I was thinking that I would be mikudeshet to this guy, even if it were not so. Right? He said, on condition I'm from a village, and he's from a big city. And he said that condition. She in her mind said, I don't really care if he's from a village or a city. If she didn't say it out loud, she was only thinking it, we don't count her thoughts. Doesn't matter. And therefore the Kiddushin is no good because the condition that he presented was not fulfilled. And the same is true the other way. If she said, I'll accept your Kiddushin on condition that I am Bat Kohen, from a town, from a city, any condition that she says, and it turns out not to be true, also the Kiddushin does not take effect. That's Mishnah. So now another example of someone doing a transaction on condition. This guy sold his property, and he didn't say so out loud, he intended that he's going to make aliyah, and he's going to sell his house here. He doesn't need it here, he's going to take the money so he can go and settle in Israel. But at the time that he sold, he did not say anything out loud. Let's say it turns out he's not able to go make aliyah, or he changes his mind. So can he go back to the buyer and say, listen, I only sold it to you because I was making aliyah, and now I'm not making aliyah, I want to go back on the sale. Rava said, you cannot do that because these are thoughts, and thoughts are not substantial. If he said out loud, listen, I'm selling you my house because I want to make aliyah, so then it's embedded, it's like a condition within the sale, right? I'm selling to you on condition that I actually do make aliyah. In that case, if he said it out loud and in the end he doesn't make aliyah, he can go back to the buyer and say, listen, I only sold to you because I make aliyah, but now I'm not making aliyah, so the condition is not fulfilled, I want it back. If he said it out loud, fine. But if it's only in one's mind, so unspoken words are not considered legally significant words. All right, that's the statement of Rava. We're going to spend a while trying to bring a proof for Rava from a few different sources. How does Rava know? Maybe he's learning it from the following Beraita. If a person obligates himself to bring a korban, So, and then he makes a promise. This, I'm going to bring korban. And then he doesn't do it. So the Beit Din has to step in and forces him to do it. You promised, so you have to fulfill your vow. Now, does that mean that we can force him against his will? No, because the pasuk also says lirsona. When you give a sacrifice, it has to be according to your will. So now we have a contradiction. Which one is it? Hakesad. How can we force him to, but also make sure it's with his will? The Beit Din will force him, give him lashes or whatever other penalties until he says, okay, I want to. Now we know, right, if you torture someone or hit them until they say I want to, maybe they say they want to because they don't want to be hit anymore, but in their heart they don't really want to, and so therefore it's actually under duress. So we see from here that even though he's thinking it, we don't take into consideration his thoughts. Because unspoken words are not legally binding words, so we don't care what he's thinking. We only follow what he does. It's like, you force a kid to apologize, right? Say you're sorry to your sister. We know he doesn't mean it, but we do it anyway. So we don't care what he's thinking, as long as you say it. So this is a good proof because we make him bring the korban, and it is considered lirsona, even though we know he doesn't really want to. So we say, no, this is not a good proof. Maybe that's different because we testify. There is a embedded presumption that a person wants to achieve atonement, right? And he gave this korban because he wants to be atoned. And therefore, even though he's unwilling to do it, when you hit him and force him to, and he says, Roseani, deep down we know that people really do want to get atonement, and that's our assumption. He really does want. He's being stubborn for some reason, so the hitting him gets that stubbornness out of him, and he is willing to do it in this case. Therefore, there's no proof. Let's try to bring a proof from the Sefer of that same Baraita. The continuation says, also regarding a get, if a man does not want to divorce his wife, and it's a circumstance that the Beit Din deems that he must divorce his wife, then we hit him and force him until he says, I want to. A get also has to be given only with the will of the man, and this is considered fine. Or a case where a person must free his slave. For example, a slave is owned by two people and one of them frees him, and now what is he going to be, half a slave, half free? We force the other guy to free the slave also. If he says he doesn't want to, how can we force him to do that? Well, you can hit him until he says, I want to. So, ve'amai, how does that work? We know in his heart he doesn't want to. He would have done it willingly, and he's only doing it because we're forcing him to. So maybe this is a good proof that unspoken words are not legally binding. No, maybe not. Maybe in those two cases, it works because it's a mitzvah to listen to the statement of the sages, that people deep down respect the sages, and we just have to beat the Yetzer Hara out of them, as Rambam says in his formula. So the beating is just to get them to come into their true will, because everybody deep down wants to do the right thing, listen to Chachamim, and they say you should divorce him. So they, in the end, need a little reminder. But they do want to, so they are willing. We assume that even in their thoughts, they in fact are willing. So we can't assume that their thoughts are against it. Therefore, there's no proof from here. So a third proof attempt. Ayela Amar Rav Yosef. Mehacham kadeshet haisha v'amar kasavur hayiti she kohenet v'harei leviya v'nimset kohenet aniya v'harei ashira v'harei aniya mekodeshet mipnei shelo hit'atu. There's a Mishnah that's going to come in a few dapim from now, daf 64, that says, if a man does Kiddushin with a woman and he says, I thought, she didn't say anything, but he, for some reason, made an assumption. I thought that she was a Kohen, but when I gave her the Kiddushin, but now it turns out she's a Levi. Or I thought she was a Levi, and now it turns out she is a Kohen. I thought she was poor, right? Why do he think that? I don't know. Maybe she dresses, in a very modest way and doesn't wear jewelry. I don't know. But turns out she was rich, or she thought she was rich, but turns out she was poor. The Kiddushin goes through because she did not trick him. If she said out loud, "Oh, I'm a Bat Kohen," and he says, "Okay, I'm going to marry you." You said, "Bat Kohen? Fine, I'll marry you because you're a Bat Kohen." If she said it out loud and tricked him, then that's Kiddushin on false premises is no good. But if she didn't say anything and he made the assumption for some reason, then the Kiddushin is valid. That's the Mishnah. Ve'amai, haka amar kasabur hayiti. Why is the Kiddushin good? Doesn't it say that he had thoughts? His thoughts, he thought she was a Kohen and she's not. So why don't we take that into account? This is a good proof that thoughts that are not spoken are not considered legally significant. Isn't that a good proof? No, not necessarily. When we say mikudeshet here, it doesn't necessarily mean that we consider them full kiddushin, go ahead, do nisuin, and live happily ever after. Maybe we're only saying lechumra, that we won't let her marry anybody else, except kiddushin from anybody else, until she gets a get from this guy. And if this guy wants to go through with it, he should give another kiddushin. So maybe this is this lechumra because we're not sure what he was really thinking or not, but maybe we do take into account his thoughts. But we're just not sure if he really was thinking that or not thinking that because he didn't say it out loud. So this is not a proof that thoughts are not considered significant because we're not considering her really fully mikudeshet. Ela amar Abaye. So a fourth attempt. Mehacha. Bechulam. Afal pi shamra belibi haya litkadesh lo. Afal pi chen ena mikudeshet. The fourth proof is from our Mishnah that we started off with today. That in all these cases, if she says, "Listen, I would have married him anyway if I knew he was from a big city," and it doesn't matter that it turns out he's from a little city, right? She says, "I was thinking that in my mind that I don't care if he's from big city or not. The Kiddushin is no good." Why not? She said that I wouldn't mind whether he's from a big city or a small town. So if we take into consideration her thoughts, then the Kiddushin should be good. So this is a proof that we don't take thoughts into consideration. Isn't that a good proof? No. Maybe in that case there's no Kiddushin because he made a condition. He said, "I'll marry you on condition that I am from a big city." So it's not within her power to uproot his condition, right? He made a condition. You can make all kinds of conditions in Kiddushin, and therefore the words he said technically are not true. So that's just simply a logical thing. It's not up to her to decide that she's okay with that condition not being fulfilled. If it's not fulfilled, it's not fulfilled. There's not a proof that in general, in other cases, not unspoken thoughts are not significant. Rather, we're going to have a final proof here. There was, in fact, an incident that happened in Rav Chista's Bet Midrash, and Rav Chista brought it to Rav Huna's Bet Midrash. And there was a question around this, and they figured it out based on the Mishnah in Me'ilah, Ufshatu HaMeha. Hamer shlucho habeli min hachalon o min hadelus kema vehebilo. Afapi shamar bal habayit lo haya belibi ela al ze kevan shebi lo mize bal habayit ma'al. The Me'ilah means you go take something that's consecrated item and use it for your personal benefit. If someone does this by mistake, they have to pay the sum plus a fifth and bring in asham me'ilot. We saw that there's a me'ilah, is a special law that yesh shaliach lidvar avera regarding me'ilah. If I send someone to commit me'ilah unknowingly, and they go and do it, the sender is responsible. Unlike for other averot, where we say en shaliach ledvar avera, but me'ilah is the sender's problem because we consider the messengership valid. So now here's the case. I go and tell the messenger, go get that money that's on the window ledge or in that box. And I have in mind a certain a box, but not the other box, because one of them has has Kodesh money, the other one has not Kodesh money. And now the messenger goes and he gets the money from the box and he goes buy something for me. He uses that money on my behalf and he brings it to me, even though the sender says, I had in mind not that box, I had in mind the other box. Nevertheless, once the messenger goes, and even if he goes to the box with the consecrated one, even though the sender had in mind a different one, doesn't matter. He said, go get the box, and this is one of the boxes that was there, and so the sender is responsible. Now we ask, why is he responsible? In his mind, he had in mind the correct box. He just didn't say, make sure to take the box on the right, not the box on the left. He didn't say the words. He said it in general, which left open the messenger to do it. The messenger correctly did what he was supposed to do according to the words of the sender. And so nevertheless, it's the sender's responsibility because we do not take into account his thoughts. So isn't this a good proof? Unspoken thoughts are not considered, right? We just say, sorry, you didn't say the box on the right, so therefore it doesn't matter what you were thinking, you're responsible because you told him, go get the money in the box. And this was money that was in one of the boxes. Isn't this a good proof? We say, wait, maybe over there, maybe in general, unspoken words can be taken into account. The problem here is that we don't believe him that he's telling the truth. Maybe he wants to get himself out of paying a korban, because if in fact he said he said what he said and didn't have any thoughts. Otherwise, now he's going to have to bring a korban and pay. He doesn't want to bring korban, so he's making up a story. Oh, I had in mind something else. Maybe that's why, because we don't believe him, because he has self-interest to lie. We answer, hold on. If he was lying, he wouldn't have to say, oh, I was thinking about the box on the right. He could have said, I was doing it on purpose. If someone commits me'ilah or sends someone to commit me'ilah on purpose, you don't bring a korban. Korban is only if you do it b'shogeg. So he could have gone out of the korban in a different way. Therefore, we should believe him when he says I had a thought, and therefore it is a good proof. But we say no. A person is not going to make himself a wicked person just to get out of a korban. Even though he wants to go to korban, he's not going to say, yeah, I did it on purpose. Well, he did it on purpose. That's even worse. Even though he doesn't have to bring korban, still he's bringing shame upon himself. So a person would not make such a lie. No, but nevertheless, there is another way he could have gotten out of the korban. He could have said, I remembered in the meantime. Right? So because the Mishnah, another Mishnah Me'ilah says, if a sender sends a messenger, and at that time he didn't remember. He forgot that money in that drawer was Kodesh money, and he sends him, go get that money and buy something from me. In the meantime, after the messenger leaves, the owner remembers, oh, that money, I did pijon of Maaser Sheni on that money, and it's actually Kodesh. I want to stop the Shaliach. I want to undo the messenger. He doesn't get a chance to undo it. He already went, and the Shaliach goes. The messenger is responsible. Even though the messenger didn't do it on purpose, that's the whole point. Bishogeg, and the owner is not, because he stopped the messengership because he remembered. So if this guy wanted to get out of giving a korban, he had an easier lie. He could have said, oh, I remembered in the middle, I don't have to bring korban. Therefore, since he has an easier lie, if he says, oh, I had in mind the one on the right, not the one on the left, so he should be believed. Since he should be believed, and we still don't take his words into account, therefore this is a good and final proof that unspoken thoughts are not considered legally significant. There we go. We actually do have a proof. Now a story. Right, this is back to the first attempted proof of a guy who sold his money, his property, having in mind that he wants to make aliyah. So he did. He went and made aliyah, but it didn't work out. Sometimes that happens. He wasn't able to settle there. He moved back to his original city. So he wanted to come and get his land back and nullify the sale. This is a case where he said it. He said when at the time of the sale, I'm selling you this because I want to make aliyah. He went made aliyah, but he had to make yeridah. Can he come back and get his land back? So Rava ruled that whoever makes aliyah and sells with that intention and was not able to, so he can nullify the sale, right? Because he did it on condition that he's going to make aliyah. He tried but didn't, but failed. So the condition was not fulfilled. He gets his land back. That's one version of what Rava said. The other version is exactly opposite. He had in mind, he said, I'll sell it to you on condition I made aliyah. He made aliyah. That's it. The condition is fulfilled. What happened after? He decided he's not working out, he's going to move back. Okay, that's now not the buyer's responsibility. The buyer says, you made aliyah, right? Okay, good. That's it. It's mine permanently. You can't go now, after trying to make aliyah for 2 years, you say, oh, now it didn't work. No, that's considered the fulfilling the condition. Another story. This guy said, I'm selling you my land, and he says so because I am on condition that I'm going to make aliyah. In the end, he didn't go. He didn't even go try it. He didn't even go there. He just he changed his mind. It didn't work out. He didn't go at all. So he wants to come and get his money back. Rav Ashi says, sorry, you can't get your money back. Go make aliyah. You said, give me the right. So I'm selling you my land. I'm going to take the money. I'm going to go make aliyah. So he didn't go. So go, right? You said you want to make aliyah. So go. You can't get your money back. Or some people say that Rav Ashi said it as a rhetorical question. But if he wants to, can he go up? So let him go up. Now, this seems to be saying the same thing, either in a positive way as a regular statement or as a rhetorical question, right? But it's the same thing that, right? If he wants, he can go up. If he wants, can he go up? Okay, my benai, what's the difference between the two formulas? Let's say there was something that was out of his control, on the way, that prevented him from going. According to the first one, you say, well, if he wants to, he can go up. And so we say, well, if he wants to, still, try a different way and you can still go up, and therefore you can't go back on the sale. In the rhetorical question, it sounds like maybe it's not so rhetorical. It's like, can he go up? You don't have to say it like in a sarcastic way. You could say, well, is he not able to go up? And if the answer is, well, no, he's not able to because there's a problem. There's a problem on the road. There's some reason why he can't get there. So if there's really a problem, then it's difficult, it's out of his hands, then he can get his money back. So there is a difference in the tone of how you say it, even though, according to Rav Ashi, if you sell your land to go up, then you should go up if you can. Mishnah ha'omer lishlocho se vekadesh li isha pelonit b'mkom ploni v'ala v'kiddusha b'makom acher ena mikudeshet. Someone tells a messenger, go and do kiddushin to this woman on my behalf and do it in this place. But he goes to a different place. Kiddushin is no good. I told you to do it in this place. I want you to do it in that other city. But if I say, go and do kiddushin on my behalf with this woman, she is in New York. Now, it turns out she's actually in Chicago. That kiddushin is good because here it's just a mar'eh makom. I'm just letting you know, I'm letting the messenger know, oh, she happens to be in New York, right? I didn't say, do kiddushin in that place, then I mean only in New York. But if I say, go do kiddushin with her, she is in New York. Well, she wasn't in New York, she was in Chicago. That's fine. I was just helping him find her. Good. Gemara notes that we have a similar Mishnah in Masechet Gitin regarding sending someone to give a get. If I say, go give this get to my wife in this place, and the messenger gives her in a different place, that's no good. I asked you to give it in this place, not in that place. If I say, give this get to my wife, she is in this place, and he gives it to her in a different place, that's okay, because I'm just helping him out, explaining, oh, I think she's in this place. Okay, I was wrong where she is, but I don't care. I just want it to be done. Now, it's the same law for Kiddushin and Gitin. Why do I need to tell me in both? Just tell me one of them, and then I can extrapolate the other. No, I need both. Behai atra rahamuli bela memale mili ilavai. Behai atra sanuli memale mili ilavai. Aval gabe kitin del rahuka kaate emar la ichpat le. If you told me this law regarding Kiddushin, I would say in the law of Kiddushin that I am trying to bring her near. I'm doing Kiddushin to marry her. So I specifically want you to do this Kiddushin in a place where the people like me, right? In New York, everybody knows me and they like me, so I'm not around. I'm away. So go there and do this for me, and the people around will say nice things. Oh, who are you getting engaged to? Oh, that guy, he's very nice, good, right? So I want you to go there, and I don't want you to go to Chicago because the people in Chicago hate me. I know those guys, and we had some bad blood there. And now you're going to go do Kiddushin over there, and the people around you say, oh, who are you getting engaged to? That guy, terrible guy, and they're going to say negative things, and she's going to be all, yeah, maybe she'll say no. Or she'll be all upset. I didn't want you to go there. So it makes sense in Kiddushin that a man will be particular only in this place and not in that place. But regarding Gitin, I might have thought that since I am divorcing her and sending her away, I don't care. Go to New York, go to Chicago. They're going to say negative things about me in Chicago. That's okay. I'm divorcing her anyway. Good. So, right, she'll be more willing to leave. So I might say I don't care. Therefore, I need the Mishnah in Gitin to say, no, still a man might care and might not want it, and his particular, and the get is not valid if you don't go to the place that I sent you. Now, if you only told me the Mishnah in Gitin, I might think, I might have thought regarding a get, I'm particular because I don't mind if you do it in Chicago, where I don't mind being degraded there. People can say, oh, you're giving a get for whom? Oh, I can't believe he's divorcing his wife. How terrible. Okay, I don't care about the people there, what my reputation is, right? But, so do it there only. But in New York, I don't want people to say negative things about me in New York, right? Because I have a lot of friends there, and so I don't want you to do in New York. I don't want to be publicized. So regarding get, I would be particular, and that's why it's no good if you go to a different place. But I might think that for Kiddushin, where this is a nice positive thing, I don't care where you go, because what people say, oh, you're getting engaged to that person, very nice, right, congratulations, mabruk. And so I don't care if I don't care, because it's a nice thing. It's not an embarrassing or a shameful thing. So therefore, this comes to Yishus. No, nevertheless, regarding Kiddushin also, it's no good if I say one place and you go to a different place. That's why I need both the law regarding Gitin and regarding Kiddushin. המקדשת האישה על מנת שאין עליה נדרים ונמסו עליה נדרים אינה מקודשת. I make a condition, you are מקודשת to me on condition that you don't have vows. I don't want someone who took vows, she's not going to drink wine, she's not eating meat, any kinds of vows. She's not going to travel to this place. I want a vow-free wife. I don't like this thing. She has all kinds of restrictions upon her. And turns out she does have vows. The Kiddushin is no good. The condition is not fulfilled. However, if I did not make an explicit condition, I just say I married her, and then it turns out I didn't know that she has these nedarim, that she has all kinds of vows that she had taken upon herself. In that case, I can divorce her, and I don't have to pay her ketubah. So it's different. If I make a condition, then the kiddushin is never valid. If I didn't make a condition, the kiddushin is valid, but I have a right to say this is a blemish. I would not have wanted to. She has a responsibility to come in clean. And I could say this is grounds for divorce without a ketubah, but the kiddushin is valid. Similarly, I make an explicit condition. I say I will marry her on condition that she doesn't have blemishes. similar blemishes similar to what would make a kohen pasul. And turns out, not one that's noticeable, and she has a blemish, so the Kiddushin is invalid. I made a condition. However, if I didn't say any make a condition, and turns out she has these blemishes, so then that's grounds for divorce without a ketubah. Any blemish that disqualifies a kohen from performing in the Bet HaMikdash also disqualify women. A man can say, no, I'm particular, I did not want to marry someone who has such a blemish. The Gemara asks, in Masechet Ketubot, we have the exact same Mishnah. Why are we repeating the Mishnah in two different places? A simple reason. Over here, we need the law regarding Kiddushin, that if you make a condition, the Kiddushin is not good at all. Since we mentioned the law regarding Kiddushin, we mentioned the entire law, including the one that's grounds for divorce without a ketubah. And that's why we mentioned everything here. Hatam ketubot istarichale tana kiddushin atu ketubot. In Masechet Ketubot, we had to quote this Mishnah because it's an example of a case where someone gets divorced without a ketubah. Once it's telling us that case, it tells us also the case of the condition where the kiddushin is no good. So this is actually an important principle. There are many cases of repeated Mishnayot in Shas, and they're repeated because it's relevant to both contexts. So, it's not like Pisukim in the Torah that if there's any repetition, we have to learn things from it. Sometimes Mishnah just repeats for the literary context. That brings us to the next Mishnah, HaMekadesh sheten nashim b'shaveh peruta. O isha achat b'pachot mishaveh peruta, av al pi sheshalach siblonot le'achar mikan ena mekudeshet, shemechamat kiddushin erishonim shalach. If a man tries to do Kiddushin with two women, with only one peruta, for the both of them, obviously that Kiddushin is no good, because each woman needs a separate peruta. One peruta for two women, not enough. Or he tries to do Kiddushin with one woman with less than a peruta. Obviously the Kiddushin is no good. And here's the Chidush. Even though he sends her lots of gifts afterwards, after this so-called Kiddushin act, attempted Kiddushin act, he sends her jewelry and furs and slippers and everything. Nevertheless, there is no Kiddushin because he thought that he's giving these presents after the Kiddushin. He assumes wrongly that the Kiddushin was valid, so these are just extra gifts. He's not giving them as Kiddushin, and therefore even if he sends $10,000 worth of gifts, there's no Kiddushin here. Similarly, if a minor does Kiddushin, the boy is a minor, and so that Kiddushin is not valid at that time. Even when he becomes an adult, he sends her gifts. Also, the Kiddushin is not valid because he thinks that they already have Kiddushin and these are just gifts. He doesn't have in mind that he's sending these as Kiddushin. If they would, any of these cases, they would have in mind and say, oh, I'm going to give this present as part of the Kiddushin, and she accepts it as such, then the Kiddushin would be good. The point is that sometimes people make mistakes and don't realize and think that they're Mikudeshet. In such cases, even if you give the gifts afterwards, the gifts are not considered part of Kiddushin, and there's no Kiddushin. Usiricha. Why do I need all three cases? In the first case, I gave a peruta. It's true, I tried to do Kiddushin with two women with one peruta, but it's easy to make a mistake and think that, well, I gave a peruta. Maybe as long as I'm giving a peruta, I can marry more than one woman with it. And so it's easy, in that case, it's easy to assume that I made a mistake, and I would think that the gifts, which for sure think that the gifts are extra gifts and not part of Kiddushin. So that case is obvious. Aval pachot mishaveh peruta ema yodeh she'en Kiddushin tofsim pachot mishaveh peruta v'chi ka meshader sublonot adata the Kiddushin ka meshader. But I might have thought that, well, everybody knows you can't do Kiddushin with less than a peruta, even to one woman. And therefore, when I send the extra gifts, maybe I'm thinking, oh, I know that the less than peruta was too little, and that wasn't Kiddushin, so the gifts that I'm giving, I'm sending as Kiddushin. I might have thought that people would know the law, and therefore consider the gifts as part of Kiddushin, and therefore I need the second case to say, even in this case, a person might make a mistake and think that he is Mikudeshet, and we therefore assume, since he did that act, he probably just made a mistake, and since he made a mistake, the gifts are not part of Kiddushin in his mind. And if you only told me those first two cases, I might have thought, okay, people often make mistakes, and they're not careful with less than a peruta and more than a peruta, and so those people will think they're really mikudeshet, and therefore we can ignore the gifts. But regarding the minor, everybody knows that a minor can't do a legal transaction, and therefore the Kiddushin is certainly not good. And therefore when he grows up and gives gifts, we might have thought that those gifts he has in mind to give as Kiddushin, and therefore the Kiddushin would be valid. Kamash Malan, that's what has to teach us that even in this case, where it's pretty unlikely that someone would make a mistake, and so we might have thought that the gifts would be part of Kiddushin. No, even in this case, if he did Kiddushin when he was a kid, since he did it, he probably thinks that it was good, and we can ignore the gifts, and there's no Kiddushin here. Itmar, Rav Huna Amar, Chosheshin l'siblonot v'chem Amar Rabba Chosheshin l'siblonot. Now, in a case where there was no act of Kiddushin beforehand, or that any that we know about, and now there are only gifts here, what do we do? Do we consider these gifts as an act of betrothal or not? Rav Huna and Rabba both say, yes, we have to be concerned that if he's sending her gifts, must be that these were for Kiddushin, and therefore, lechumra, we're not going to let her go ahead and do Kiddushin from someone else. In other words, this is a case where, let's say they spoke about Kiddushin, and she agreed, I agreed to marry you, and then he sends her these gifts, but he doesn't say Haret Mikudeshet specifically with these gifts, and she accepts it in a normal ceremony, but she did. We know that she agrees to marry him, and now he sends her these gifts, and she accepts it. We have to worry that maybe this is a valid act of Kiddushin, lechumra. Now, Amar Rabba, after Rabba said that very law, he asked himself a question, challenged himself from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says, if you do some kind of act that's invalid, and then you send gifts, there's no Kiddushin. We don't worry about the gifts. We don't take them into consideration. But here you do. Why? So Abaye helped Rabba, his teacher, and solve the contradiction. The Mishnah gives its own reason and says, in that case, because he already gave her half a penny, he thinks that the Kiddushin was done, and that's why when he gives gifts, the gifts are just gifts and are certainly not part of Kiddushin. But we can actually prove, but that's the only reason. However, if there was no act of Kiddushin beforehand, and he's only sending gifts, then he may very well think that these gifts are Kiddushin, and so therefore it's consistent with Rabba's ruling. The Mishnah is consistent. That's one version of Rabba and Abaye's statement. But there's another version which is the opposite. Amar Rabba. In this version, Rabba said the same law, that Chosheshin l'siblonot, and here he's not asking himself a question, but actually bringing a proof for himself from the Mishnah. What's my source? Well, from this Mishnah, which gives a reason. In the Mishnah, the only reason why we don't consider the gifts to be a Kiddushin is because he already gave her a coin, a half a coin, and so he thinks that there are mikudeshet, and that's therefore we assume that he thinks that the gifts are just gifts and not part of Kiddushin. But so that's only when he makes a mistake. But in a general case where he didn't do an act of Kiddushin, any act at all, and they agreed to get married, now he's giving her gifts, we have to worry that he does have in mind Kiddushin, and therefore we have to be machmir on it. That's Rabba's proof. And then Abaye comes and says it's not necessarily a proof. Abaye, Lami Baya Kamar. Abaye says could be that the Mishnah is saying this case, and then saying, and I don't need to tell you the next case. Not only in a general case where they didn't even start doing, and maybe they spoke about it, but they didn't even start doing any act. In that case, I don't have to worry about it. So Abaye is disagreeing. He says, no, you don't have to worry about gifts in a general case. And in that case, obviously, you don't have to. Ela afilu hacha. I don't even need to say that. The Mishnah is giving us the bigger chidush. Even in this case, the Nachit Torah Kiddushin, where he started off, he gave her half a coin, half a peruta, and he said, here, haded mikudeshet. So he started the process, maybe he knows that half a peruta is not good, and he's sending the rest of the gifts as the rest of the kiddushin, so it'll be more money. Kamash malan. This is the bigger chidush, that even in this case, where he started a kiddushin process, nevertheless, we assume that he thought that the kiddushin was done, and these are just gifts and not for kiddushin. And I don't have to say, it's obvious that in a case where he didn't start the process, that the gifts are just gifts and not part of Kiddushin, and therefore this Mishnah, Abaye says, is not a proof for the position of Rabbah. Mai have Allah. Now we want to say, well, what is the law in Rabbah? Is a halacha like Rabbah? Do we assume that the gifts are gifts or not in a general case? Amar Papa ba'atrad mikadeshe v'adam misabeleh hashinan. Misabeleh v'adam mikadeshe la hashinan. Papa, it depends where you are. If you're in a place where people generally do kiddushin first, and then they send the gifts, the dowry, the swanny, the nice gifts after the kiddushin, which makes sense to do. You want to make sure that she's committed before you give all those gifts. If you live in a place like that, then we have to assume if there was gift giving, there probably was kiddushin before, because they wouldn't give gifts unless there was kiddushin. So even if we don't know about the kiddushin, we can assume that there was kiddushin, and therefore that gifts are a sign that there is kiddushin here. However, if you're in a place where people give gifts first and then they do kiddushin, which also makes sense to do, you want to encourage her to accept the kiddushin. So you give lots of gifts first, and then she's, oh well, they gave me all these gifts, so I have to say yes now. He must really like me. So if you're living in that kind of place, then the presence of gifts is not a sign that there was Kiddushin, because Kiddushin is generally done afterwards. So that's the easy solution of Rav Papa. Just look at the reality. We ask about Rav Papa's distinction here. If it's a place where everybody does Kiddushin and then give gifts, then obviously, if there were gifts, there must have been Kiddushin. Why would anyone need to tell me this law? No, we learned this law. The chidush is in a place where most people do kiddushin and then give gifts, but there are a few people that give gifts first and then do kiddushin. And I might have thought that we have to take into account this minority. They give gifts first, and therefore, so since people give gifts first, so even in those places, there's no kiddushin. Kamash malan. This teaches us that we forget it. We ignore the minority. We follow the majority. The majority of people do kiddushin and then give gifts, and therefore, if there are gifts, we have to assume that there was kiddushin before that. A similar question, Rav Acha bar Rav Huna asked Rava, how chazak shetar ketubah bashuk mahu? Amar lem v'chim mipnei shemachazik shetar ketubah bashuk nachazik ba ke'eshet ish. Let's say we see a ketubah. It says, right, Reuben and Sarah, they have a ketubah with their names on it. So if we see this in the marketplace, maybe it's some scribe store. Should we assume that they are married? Because look, there's a ketubah, and then we have to be machmir, and for whatever consequences that will have. And so Rava said, what? Just because there is a shtar ketubah somewhere out in the marketplace, we should assume that she's an eshet ish? Maybe not. Maybe someone wrote a ketubah, but didn't go through with the marriage, and they never did kiddushin. Maybe they wrote the ketubah first in anticipation of a kiddushin, but it never happened. So just because the ketubah was written, It doesn't mean that the Kiddushin happened. So what's the bottom line? Well, it depends where you are. If you're in a place where people do Kiddushin first, and then they go write a Ketubah, well then the existence of a Ketubah means that they were Mikudeshet. So yes, they must be Eshet Ish. If you're living in a place where people write Ketubot first, and only then do Kiddushin, then, well, the existence of a Ketubah doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean that they did Kiddushin, and so we can assume that she is, we don't assume that she is Eshet Ish. We ask, wait a second, if you're in a place where they do Kiddushin, and then Ketubah, and then the Ketubah, that's obvious. Why would even he teach us that law? No, we need to teach that law in a place where the scribe is not commonly available. I might have thought, even though they like to do Kiddushin and then write the Ketubah after, but this guy might be afraid, wait, the scribe is only here today and he's not going to be back for another week. You know what, I better get a Ketubah written. And I might have thought that, so therefore we should worry about that case, and therefore the existence of the Ketubah does not mean that they are Mikudeshet, and so this has to teach. Even in this case, we don't think about that minority possibility, since most people or everybody in this place does Kiddushin and only then writes the Ketubah. If there is a Ketubah, we can assume that there was Kiddushin, and we have to be machmir, assume that she is an Eshet Ish Kamash Malan, right? That is what Rav Ashi wants to teach us. Baruch Adonai Leolam, Amen ve'amen.